Hello and welcome to the next episode of Goa Wants to Know. Today we have as our guest Valmiki Naik, the Vice President of the Aam Aadmi Party, and their potential or probably their declared Panjim candidate. He has been contesting in Panjim for a long time, but here we will speak to him in both his capacities, that of him being the Vice President of the party, as well as somebody who understands Panjim well and looks at its future. I'll start with the party, Valmiki. In 2017, the AAP, of course, was came with a bang, made its presence felt, contested in many constituencies, had arguably the best set of candidates across all parameters in terms of freshness, honesty, what they brought to the table, and yet, of course, AAP could not open its account. This time it's also very much in the fray, has probably learned from its mistakes. But if you can just take us through 2017 and up to 2022 now, how has AAP changed and how they're approaching this election differently?
Correct. First of all, Sujay, thanks for having me on your show. If you see the 2017 elections vis-a-vis 2022, it's similar in a lot of ways with one big difference, I would say. The similarity is that in 2017 also, people did not want the BJP government.
Right.
The choice at that time in front of them was Congress and AAP. People wanted, they saw AAP, they liked our candidates, like you said, they liked our campaign, they liked our manifesto. But people of Goa felt that it's a very new party, let's give them some time to grow and see how they perform. And so that is why in 2017 people overwhelmingly chose the Congress party. Congress was the single largest party. In 2022 now, it is again the same situation. Definitely people don't want the BJP again this time. Again today I feel the choice before them mainly is Congress and Aam Aadmi Party. And now because of what happened in the past 5 years, I am confident that people are going to choose Aam Aadmi Party. And like I said, the difference is because even after giving Congress the full mandate in 2017, we still had to suffer a BJP government for the past 5 years. Not only did the Congress betray the people's mandate in 2017, they strengthened the BJP by allowing their MLAs to betray them and the voters. Whereas in 2017, where AAP is concerned, the people of Goa sent us a message saying that, you know, you guys are very good, we want to vote for you, but work a little bit. We took that message and went on the ground. We built our organization very painstakingly. We took up every single issue that was, concerning Goans. And most importantly, we contested various elections. We had success in places like the Zilla Parishad. But most importantly, if you saw, especially in the last 1.5 years of COVID, you know, Aam Aadmi Party was the only party seen on the ground. We literally went door to door helping people with ration kits, with oximeters, with food, with medicines, and without a single MLA or having any sort of, powers, people saw us in a very different light that, this party that does not have anything in Goa are helping us so much. So that is why I believe today that when I go door-to-door campaigning, this is what people tell me. Today we are looking at Aam Aadmi Party as an option because in Goa we have created our presence, we have an organization, we have a body of work, I would say. People trust us. As well as on a governance level, our government in Delhi over the past 5 years since 2017 has done a stellar job. The work we have done in education, healthcare, basic amenities like water, roads, electricity. The things we have done are talked about not just in Delhi, not just in the rest of the country, but all over the world in some of the things. So today, like I said, even though the choice is between Congress and Aam Aadmi Party, if you don't want the BJP today people are overwhelmingly looking at the AAP as the party they want to vote for.
Let's look at it is a fact that surveys indicate that there is a 15 to 18% vote share that AAP has, give or take a few percentages. But it has maintained that kind of a response percentage over a period of time, which is impressive. I'm not saying it's not. It could be higher, but it goes up and dips on a week-to-week basis. But it's fair to assume that in this election, that is a kind of a vote share which seems to be remaining with AAP even now. It can go up possibly, but remain. But also in the last elections, if you look at the total number of vote share, in terms of vote share to votes, there was a big disparity, in the sense that it had a vote share, but obviously it couldn't get seats. So the indication was that yes, there is a groundswell of support across the state in many constituencies, but that support is not enough to beat other factors, and for AAP to become the single largest party in each of those constituencies. Now that situation may also happen this year, if, and that's one view, may happen this year, if there is there is no strong face projected, in the sense that at the end of the day, a vote percentage takes you up to a point, but you need about 4 or 5, say, big ticket quote unquote leaders to take it. See, for instance, here we don't have an Arvind Kejriwal. In Delhi, Arvind Kejriwal becomes the fulcrum around which the campaign revolves. So don't you think that becomes an issue?
First of all, I would slightly differ, because most of the surveys, including the national surveys, they are giving us in excess of 22 to 25%,
Fine. Okay.
which is a significant increase from the 6% we ended up with in the last.
So I was saying 15 to 18. You are saying it's slightly more than that. So fine,
yes,
I take that.
right.
that. Okay.
But that increase in vote share is also coming at the cost of both Congress as well as BJP. That is the significant thing. We are not just fighting only for the anti-BJP votes. We are breaking into the BJP vote share. This is a huge difference from the 2017 elections. Secondly, what I will suggest is, I feel is that people of Goa, we had a very bad experience in that period from 1990 to 2005. That 15-year period, there were almost 15 changes of government.
Yes.
Different people became chief ministers. There was president rules 4 or 5
That's
times.
correct. That's
so, and we suffered a lot as a state. Today all the unemployment issues, all the other issues we have is because there was no governance for a whole period of 15 years. There was only politics.
Right.
So if you've noticed, from 2005 onwards, people of Goa are giving a very clear mandate, whether it is to the BJP, whether it is to the Congress.
Yes.
They're saying take the mandate and have a stable governance.
Right.
Unfortunately, the parties have got stability. People have given them stability, but the parties have not delivered governance.
Right.
So that is why I feel that today, even though our vote share may be around 22%, in the end, on the day of election, the people of Goa, in their wisdom, which they have shown in the past 15 years, they are going to not consider other parties and vote overwhelmingly against the incumbent BJP and vote for Aam Aadmi Party as the party to replace them. And we feel confident that this time we will actually get, a chance to form the government. So that is why we are not, in a hurry like other parties to go for alliances, poach MLAs, do all these things to kind of get a shortcut, because we have done our homework and we have done really a body of work. We have worked strongly on the ground. We have served the people. People have seen that this is a party that serves us, and just does not only indulge in politics or poaching of MLAs.
Okay, let's we accept and let's park this thought. Park this thought, because I'm getting another discussion. We'll keep this thought and we'll say what you're essentially saying makes a lot of sense, and I take it and I'm parking it. At the same time, while doing that, what I'm also raising is, if that is the case, and I'm sure that is the case, but if that is the case, then why was the need for the party to opt for a crutch like saying that we will have a Bhandari chief minister and a Catholic deputy chief minister? Because if performance pays, then this kind of an announcement becomes antithetical to the premise that you have rightfully already laid out.
No, I would say that that announcement about the Bhandari CM face and the Catholic deputy CM face, this is just the reality of Goa actually. There is a feeling among the Bhandari community as well as the Catholic community that they have not been represented in the government, even though they have that much of a share in the population. So when we say that we'll have a Bhandari CM face, it definitely, the first criteria will be performance. What we are saying is that maybe we have 6 or 7 good faces who can be chief ministers and deputy chief ministers, who are all qualified, who will all do a good job, and we are just going to choose a Bhandari face as the CM face because they have not been given a chance by the BJP and the Congress traditionally, despite their overwhelming representation in the demographics of Goa.
But if you are
that is the simple reasoning behind it.
Okay, but if you are kind of restricting the ecosystem or the space for the chief chief minister's job or the chief minister's post to a particular caste, aren't you kind of narrowing it down and eliminating good people from other communities? I mean, does that is it really fair to the others?
But it has not been fair to the Bhandari Samaj. And why do you feel that there are no good people in Bhandari Samaj?
I'm not feeling that.
That
I'm
is
saying
the
that they can
overwhelming.
be,
Yes.
my issue is that completely on merit, if there is a chief minister who's the best choice, who happens to be a Bhandari, why not? What I'm essentially saying is that a Bhandari person, a person belonging to the Bhandari community, should not be left out. But to say that one person of the Bhandari community will be the chief minister is leaving out other credible people from other communities from getting that position.
So what I'm saying is that we will have capable people from all communities in the party. We already have, I believe so.
Yes.
And when we have the chance of forming the government and making these choices, we are saying that we will, in a pool of say 5 people from different castes or religions who are equally qualified and equally capable, we are just saying that because of the historical discrimination against the Bhandari Samaj and against the Catholic religion, we will choose these people in those positions. So we are not excluding anybody, definitely not.
See, the issue is, I'm not saying only AAP is doing it. See, the point is, we all know that all parties do it subtly or otherwise.
Exactly.
But the point is to make, I mean, it's not that other parties don't have these considerations. We know exactly how Mr. Channi got selected as the chief minister of Punjab. They wanted to put up a Dalit face. And it's happened in UP, it's happened in Bihar, it's happened in other places. But for a party to actually kind of spell it out and say it, one wonders whether that's the right way to go, because at the end of the day, caste, creed, community should never be a criteria for positions like this.
Right. I think we can have a
discussion on
that.
Correct, yes.
Yeah. We can
correct. But I take your point of view and move on. Okay. The thing here is, finally, my point is in terms of policies, programs, what is the X factor that AAP is bringing to the table this time? What is the key differential according to you?
I think the key difference is that I would say revolves around the 6th guarantee that Arvind Kejriwal announced a few days ago. In general, our key difference is that we are doing this guarantee thing that we are promising the people, and we are calling it a guarantee because these are things that are not just promises that will be in some brochure called the manifesto. These are guarantees which we have fulfilled to the people of Delhi, and that is why we are able to promise them to the people of Goa as a guarantee. So that is the biggest difference. And today people of Goa believe that Arvind Kejriwal is the only person who actually fulfills his promises. They have seen them happen in Delhi. So that is why I feel that is the biggest key of the differentiator bit for AAP this time. And the 6th guarantee is basically we are offering the first corruption-free government to Goa this time. The truly corruption-free government. And that will be...
That has been the hallmark anyway of AAP.
Exactly. But what that does is, that translates into fulfilling all the other guarantees. Like today, the biggest question that comes when we say we are going to give free water or free electricity or free Tirth Yatras, people ask where is the money going to come from. So we've explained to them, we've gone door to door, we've held corner meetings, we've had registration campaigns, and today people are convinced that yes, traditionally, whether it is BJP or Congress, thousands of crores of public money has been siphoned off into corruption. And when AAP comes into power, we will remove that corruption, and the same money that is already there in the government will be used for these welfare schemes.
Okay.
We have done it in Delhi in a way without raising any taxes. We have not taken any loans. So all this money people were already paying as taxes to the government.
Right.
And that has been proved by the CAG, the Comptroller and Auditor General. Whenever we hear about CAG reports, it's usually in relation to some big scam done by some government. But in the case of Delhi, the 2019 CAG report, which analyzed our performance over the past 5 years, praised the Delhi government for its fiscal, prudence. They said that we have given so many things free, we have not taken any loans, we have not raised any taxes, we have not got any help from the central government, and yet we are working on a fiscal surplus.
Right.
So we are the only government in the country that is running on a profit without raising taxes, without doing any scams, without taking any loans. So this is the type of governance we want to offer to the people of Goa, and that is the key, like you mentioned, that
Right.
we are offering.
Right. I'll dwell on two of the guarantees a little bit. One is, of course, the free water. I mean, no water bills and free water guarantee.
Yeah. Actually, we have promised free electricity.
Sorry,
Yeah.
free electricity, not free water. Sorry, free electricity. And the second guarantee is your Teerth Yatra guarantee. Okay. So if you look at the free electricity guarantee, now the point is it's fine. I mean, free power is needed because lower sections or poorer sections of the family of the society, they need that free power, and obviously higher strata of society who can afford to pay will pay and balance it out. I understand the logic, but while doing that, don't you think it's also very important to ensure that there is adequate and uninterrupted power? Because what is happening is the biggest issue in the state is, of course, power bills are going up, and that indeed is a problem. But the question is of actual availability of power, and there is a severe shortage of the availability of power because power thefts happen. There is no proper augmentation of supply. Distribution losses also happen. So one would have kind of expected, or one would have fairly assumed that would have also been a bit of a focus. I'm not saying this is incorrect, but I'm just saying that also needs to be done to ensure that they get power without any kind of disturbance. Because what happens is when you do not get power, then free power becomes meaningless.
Absolutely. That is like the free water promise that Dr. Pramod Sawant gave. You don't get water, so there's no question of free water, like you said.
Correct.
I completely agree with you, and let me clarify that we have not just our power guarantee is not just free power of 300 units. There were 4 promises made. The first promise was actually 24/7 uninterrupted electricity.
Right.
Second promise was 300 units free. Third promise was free power to farmers for agricultural purpose, and fourth promise was any inflated bills, that will be waived off. So these are the 4 promises that we made in our power guarantee. So the first, like I said, was 24/7 uninterrupted electricity, and this was a problem in Delhi as well.
Right.
Our power minister, Mr. Satyendra Jain, in his debate with the Goan power minister Cabral, demonstrated very effectively how they achieved it. There was the same issue in Delhi.
Right.
Almost to run any business in Delhi prior to the Aam Aadmi Party government coming, you needed a generator because there were like 7-8 hour power cuts throughout the city.
Right. Right.
And they went, literally gully to gully and fixed all the transformers, all the cables, all the poles. They upgraded the infrastructure over a period of 3 to 4 years, and that's when they were able to guarantee 24/7 electricity today in Delhi. And this is the same thing what we require to do in Goa, and we will do it.
The other guarantee of free pilgrimages to both the Catholics mainly to Valankini and then the Hindus to their places of religious interest. Now the thing is again, why was that needed? I mean, was it that big a issue with Goans to go to Valankini or go to any of the Hindu shrines?
Right. This is
what was the
actually
felt need?
Yeah, like I said, this is a scheme that we have in Delhi,
right,
and it's hugely popular,
right.
And the reason we have this scheme is because we actually fulfilled a lot of the promises that we had made to people when we asked for their vote in the previous election.
Right.
Whether it was free power, free water, good roads, good schools, good hospitals,
right.
All these things we completed in 5 years. And then we asked the people, what else do you want? We still have money left. We still have the energy to do more work for you.
Yeah.
And, so we came up with these schemes like Teerth Yatra Yojana. We came up with these schemes like doorstep delivery of governance services. We came up with these schemes like free bus travel for women. So these are all things we did after completing the entire manifesto that we had promised the people.
Right. Okay.
So, and this Teerth Yatra scheme is actually hugely popular in Delhi. And, I think...
No, I get that. I get that this is going to be very popular in Delhi, looking at the demographics of Delhi. But I'm just saying that, did you also feel that there is a felt need for that even in Goa?
Definitely, actually. And what happens is, if you see at a certain level, a lot of politicians already offer these schemes,
Right.
but only to, you know, they are a vote bank.
That's right,
Few
right.
hundred voters. So we said if this is already happening and people are, you know, people want to avail of such schemes, why not do it at a governance level? So we
Right.
are offering it to all people of Goa, and we are saying that we have the money to do it. So why not?
Right. Right.
And we will also do good roads, we will provide water, we will provide electricity, we will improve
Right.
schools, hospitals, everything else we will do as well.
Okay, okay, okay. Okay, now just one final question, in the sense that is AAP planning to contest all 40 seats?
Yes, definitely yes. Like I said, we want to offer the people of Goa a complete change in the system. And change in the system means literally I feel and the party feels that, you know, every face in the assembly today needs to be replaced. You know, we need to replace the chief minister, all the minister and all the MLAs we have seen for too long, you know.
Right, right.
And we cannot do that until we give them a full package. So we want to give the people of, like I said, we are confident that people want a clear mandate. They have wanted this since 2005 as I demonstrated. So we completely are confident that this time they will give Aam Aadmi Party a full mandate.
So you are not ruling out any alliances with any party whatsoever?
Pre-poll alliances definitely we are rolling out. We are focusing on finding good candidates. We are coming up with a very good manifesto and our guarantees.
Right.
And post-poll, you know, depending on what the people's decision is, what the people's mandate is, we will definitely get into any post-poll alliance that is required to have a non-BJP government.
Right, right, right. Okay, okay. So you're saying pre-poll no alliance, post-poll you're open to alliances if you fall short,
Yes.
and which helps you form a non-BJP government. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's a firm decision that
Yes,
that has been
yes,
taken.
yes.
So you're absolutely ruling out any kind of a pre-poll alliance with any party.
Yes, and we feel that, you know, we are in an alliance with the Goan people, I would
Correct.
say. You
Yes,
know, we have
yes.
worked for the last 5 years, people
Right.
trust us today. So it is our duty to give them that, you know, full package where they don't fall prey to the type of, you know, hung assemblies and fractured mandates of 1990 to 2005.
Correct.
So I feel they will choose Aam Aadmi Party this time.
Just one last question. You see, I mean, one last question before we move on to the Panjim part of the conversation. See, what has also happened is that over a period of time, one sees, and I'm speaking specifically of the of what happened in Karnataka and other places during Christmas, when places of where right-wing Hindu activists went into schools and said that Hindu children should not be observing Christmas, and made disparaging remarks, and literally kind of admonished nuns and teachers who were kind of celebrating Christmas. Then one cross was desecrated somewhere in Ambala. Then institutions were attacked also in Assam, in the northeast. The issue is that, you know, when this kind of a atmosphere persists, there is bound to be kind of a fear in the ecosystem. Does AAP promise that, you know, it'll take care of you know, and ensure that this kind of a fear factor doesn't prevail in society?
No, absolutely. In fact, just 2 days ago, you know, we had a press conference in this, and we have condemned these incidents all over India that are happening. And it is really sad that they're happening during Christmas, which is the holiest time for Christians. So it was very targeted, you know, in Ambala, in Karnataka, in Assam, Agra. They burned effigies of Santa Claus, you know.
Right.
So we've condemned those in no uncertain terms. And this is not just that. If you see in Goa, the chief minister's statement talking about, you know, Hindu temples being demolished during Portuguese times.
Correct.
These are all again, you know, classic plan B for the BJP. I would say it is plan P. P for polarization.
Right.
Because when they know that they have nothing to offer to the people, when they don't have answers to give to the questions that people are raising, then they resort to such things to divert people's attentions. So for the last 10 years of governance, Bharatiya Janata Party in Goa has nothing to show. That is why they're going 500 years back and trying to scratch old wounds and distract people through polarization. So we condemn that, and, you know, like I said, Aam Aadmi Party is committed, you know, to make sure that this sort of polarization never comes to Goa. And not just Aam Aadmi Party, the people of Goa are committed, and we will never let this happen in Goa.
See, the AAP government in Delhi has also got into a bit of a controversy with regard to that that demolition of the church in there. What really happened there, in the sense that because that drew you all a lot of flack at that point of time. So the thing is, of course, we now hear that a portion of that has got built and all that. Right. What really happened there? Could that situation have been handled a little better?
Yeah, so I think, you know, there was a lot of politics played when it actually happened. And now that the dust has settled down, couple of things have become very clear.
Okay.
One is that the BJP demolished that church through its DDA, the Delhi Development Authority. The Aam Aadmi Party government. Or
the DDA doesn't come under the Delhi government at all?
No, it comes under the LG, which is under the central government. So those are the people who did it. And
actually, but LG is the LG of Delhi, no?
Yes, but they are, you know how the LG works in Delhi. They have tried to, you know, subvert all our governance, you know, and tried to sideline us using powers. And in fact, they passed a bill recently which basically says that LG is the government in Delhi.
Right.
So why are you having elections and, you know, electing 70 MLAs?
Correct.
Right. So in the case of the church specifically, now there's a letter from Little Flower Church itself. The priest of the Little Flower Church itself, saying that Aam Aadmi Party had nothing to do with that, and no other party should play politics with this. And in fact, like you mentioned, we made sure that they have a structure to have prayers during Christmas.
Right.
And they have been very cooperative and thankful, you know, to the Aam Aadmi Party government. We have given them our full support, and we are working together to make sure that church is fully rebuilt as well.
Okay. Thank you, Valmiki. We'll kind of end this section of this Q&A, and we'll get back to you on the other side. Thank you. Welcome back. Valmiki, the second half of this particular interaction that I'm having with you, we will focus on the capital city Panjim, because you've been a candidate more than months from Panjim, and obviously you're very well known in the city. You've not got the desired results, but you are giving it another shot this time. We fully understand that Panjim has not had a non-BJP MLA for over 25 years now, and Panjim has always kind of voted for, quote unquote, the main national party most of the time. I'm speaking of the last 20-25 years. Okay. Now, in that kind of a situation, it has either voted for a main national party, or it has voted for a big political leader. It voted for Parrikar. And of course, then it's voted for Siddharth Kunkulikar, but he got those votes because he was a Parrikar appointed person, not specifically in his own right. So in this kind of a scenario, and then of course we've had Babush Montserrat, but Babush Montserrat has been a larger than life figure, not necessarily for the right reasons, but of course he's controlled that whole little pocket bearer of Tiswadi. So they've either kind of voted for the BJP, or they've voted for somebody like Babush Montserrat, who has not necessarily won as a Congress candidate or as an independent candidate or as a BJP candidate, but because of who he is and what he has brought to the politics of the area and the way people have voted. In this kind of a scenario, and I would call it cesspool, not a scenario, being what Panjim, where do you find yourself in, and how do you propose to float and not sink in this cesspool?
Correct. Actually, this election will be the first, I would say, election that the BJP will be fighting without the leadership of Mr. Parrikar. So, like you said, he has been kind of like the focal point of the BJP, and Panjim has been very strongly controlled by the BJP for more than a quarter of a century, except for the last bipole. So in that context, a lot of BJP voters themselves are looking for options now, because they have seen that the BJP today, especially the one that is in the government, is not the BJP they supported all these years, is not the BJP that Mr. Parrikar helmed, all these years, and they are very disappointed with this. So that is one aspect. Besides that, the BJP cadre, which worked to bring Mr. Parrikar to power all these years, they themselves are extremely disappointed because the person whom they campaigned against, Babush Monserrat, all these years, whether in Panjim or Taligaon, is now today their boss. And like you've seen, you know, there's a lot of rumblings of discontent within the party. They're trying to promote other candidates. Whether that happens, we will see. But like I said, the BJP vote bank is not monolithic as it has been all these years. On the other part, there was the Congress party, but that is only at a state level. In Panjim, Congress has been non-existent.
Right.
They don't have a consistent face. They don't have an organization structure to speak of. They have just been, you know, trying to profit from the hand symbol, you know. So both these voters, the BJP and the Congress voters, are really disappointed today. You know, in my first contest in 2017, I got 2000 votes, which was excellent for, you know, a first time candidate. I was literally going to people's houses and introducing myself, my party. Today, 5 years later, when I go door to door campaigning, people welcome me by name. They ask me to sit inside, and, you know, they talk about Aam Aadmi Party as their party. Because like I said, you know, we have worked on the ground, we have gained the trust of the people. So this election is going to be completely different from all other elections in Panjim. Today people see Aam Aadmi Party as a real alternative,
But the
a
Panjim
real
election
choice.
has always been an election of money power also. I mean, you know how things work. You know that there are certain pockets that vote blindly for a particular candidate because of all the favors and all the, you know, help that that particular candidate has given. So how do you account for that? Because there is obviously seems to be some kind of a cult loyalty towards, say, Monserrat there.
Right, right. And what we are going is door to door. We are explaining the basically the economics of this. You know, when we are asking people to vote for us, we are telling them that don't vote on the basis of getting 2000 rupees or 5000 rupees, you know, the one day before the election, and vote somebody in for the next 5 years.
Right.
Here is what we are offering. If you vote for Aam Aadmi Party, you will actually get schemes or save money because of our schemes up to 5000 rupees per month. So we do a simple calculation over next 5 years. You stand to lose 3 lakhs because you voted for a person who has given you just 5000 rupees once. So we do these sort of, you know, exercises with the people where we make them understand how much they are losing by voting on the basis of money.
Right.
And this has really had an effect in the past few months that we have gone through them. And like I said, our guarantees, you know, are not just some jumlas, election jumlas. These are guarantees, these are promises we have fulfilled in Delhi. So people see these as something tangible, something real. It is not just some grand promise that all other parties make.
Okay. Now, if you look at Panjim for the last, say, again 20 years, one has seen about 4 or 5 issues that are sometimes flagged by parties, sometimes not. But the issues remain unsolved. Firstly, look at the Santinez Creek, for instance. We've been hearing stories about the creek, about the dredging of the creek, about the beautification of the creek for years and years. Then the Santinez Creek was not part of the Smart City project later on, it was roped in as part of the Smart City project. So that is number one. You can address all these things together in one shot. Okay, that's one issue. Second is, if you look at the issue of parking. Now, simple things like they have not been able to come up with a foolproof pay parking system even now, though there is a semblance of pay parking happening now, but that again has issues. See, people still don't get a good place to park. We have a multi-level parking which is hardly used. All the cars out, you know, in that whole casino belt of near the Mandovi, that's literally been completely taken over. No serious exercise has happened. No dialogue has probably happened even with the casino owners to agree to do proper parking. Maybe suggestions have come from them, but the end result is that, you know, a proper parking mechanism and system is not in place, right? So these are two issues. Thirdly, could be the whole issue of pollution and garbage, and then you come to the issue of sewage as well. I mean, you have large quantities of sewage, which is though there is a plant there, but one has seen this. The large quantities of sewage are dumped directly into the creek. That sewage is entering into fields. The beautiful fields in and around Talegaon and other places are getting completely destroyed now because of bad water, polluted water getting in. So you see, it's almost, you know, the whole system there has become like a hydra-headed inefficient monster. and you cannot just manage to tackle it. There are multifarious issues. They're all civic issues, but not really being tackled. I mentioned all these points for you to give us a holistic overview of how these issues can be approached.
Yeah, Sujay, you're absolutely right. You know, it looks like every manifesto for every Panjim election is the same thing. You know, nobody really works on them. I just want to approach this in a very slightly different way. There is a very interesting, rating index of the central government called the Ease of Living Index. The Ease of Living Index is basically implemented by the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, and they look at 114 cities across India, and they rate them. They rate them on the basis of 50 criteria. You know, broadly, I think classified in about 3 categories like quality of life and economic ability and sustainability. These are the 3 categories these 50 criteria fit in. The quality of life is basically things to do with exactly what you said. You know, the parking, the garbage, the flooding, you know, the traffic, the creek issues. Economic ability is whether there are sufficient, you know, avenues for economic opportunities available in the city to have jobs, to run businesses, which is like you're saying, you know, it is today, that is also under question. And sustainability is whether the long-term sustainability of Panjim as a city has been evaluated. And as we see, due to sea level rise or due to infrastructure overloading, Panjim is under a lot of risk in many ways over the next 20 years. So if you look at these 3 things, 3 categories, the Ease of Living Index covers all the problems of Panjim. Now, according to this index, do you know what the ranking of Panjim is out of 114 cities in India? 90. And rightly so, because we are facing
almost rock bottom.
Yes, almost rock bottom. Yes. So basically, my whole goal will be, if my party, you know, gives me that responsibility, and if the people of Panjim elect me, in my very first term, going through all these 50 criteria, I want to bring Panjim to the top 10. I think that is easily possible. It is a small city. It is an already planned city, which has been unplanned, I would say, and destroyed. So it is very easily possible to bring it to the top 10 in the first term. And in the second term, I will strive to make it the #1 city in India in the Ease of Living Index.
So that is pretty commendable. It's just that on these specific issues, have you kind of thought of the first early steps that need to be taken? We look at creek, just even if it's a one-liner, just your thought on a possible solution to the creek issue or the parking issue, on these issues. I'll come to the whole universe of smart city after this, after you answer this. But for now, can you just quickly, you know, just off the cuff, speak about 2 or 3 quick things that need to be done for these on these?
Absolutely. You know, on the creek issue, it has been a real, you know, pain in the back, I would say, of Panjimites for a long time. I'll just give you an example. I studied abroad in the US, and I lived in a place called San Antonio. And San Antonio is a city in Texas which is very popular for something called the river walk. There is a river that flows to the city, and they have developed it beautifully, and you know, there's restaurants, there's museums, there's a lot of activities that take place on both banks of that creek. And you know what that river walk is basically? It is not a river at all. It is a 2 feet deep man-made gutter that runs through the city. But they developed it so beautifully, they've kept it clean, and they've created an economic activity around it. And we have such a beautiful asset, I would call it an asset. Today, Santinez Creek is looked at something like a really dirty, you know, eyesore. I look at it as an asset. Within 2 years, we can completely turn around Santinez Creek into an asset where people will come from other parts of India, you know, to have our own
experience.
Yes, exactly. So the possibilities are endless. You just need somebody who loves Panjim, won't focus on, you know, corruption, and use the funds for doing these things which will add value to the people of Panjim.
Got it. Let's talk a little bit about mobility, internal mobility. All these issues of parking and other aspects ultimately boil down to mobility. Because let us accept, why do so many cars come in? So many cars come in because there's not an efficient transport system. If there's an efficient transport system, so many people living in Panjim will not take their cars or their scooters out.
Exactly.
If you have a very door-to-door bus service, why would somebody take it? So one reason why this congestion is happening is because you have your cars of the Panjim locals, but plus you have vehicles of people from all over Goa who come into Panjim to do business or work or whatever.
Correct.
So one is, of course, if you do that internal mobility well, number one. Number two, if you can restrict tourist buses and other other vehicles coming in from outside Panjim into one particular zone, and then have a good internal mobility system, walkways, other forms of transportation to get into the city, or have charge heavy fines or heavy fees to bring your car inside and park. See, my issue is ultimately you need to have a mobility plan. And I'm going on to my next question, because the mobility plan is also linked to the smart city, because the whole mobility plan was also part of the smart city plan.
Exactly.
So firstly, if we can address that, for so many years, why have we not been able to get a proper mobility plan in place?
No, exactly. And what's sad about Panjim is that there have been so many consultants brought on board, there have been so many plans made,
Yes.
and there was good things and bad things in all the plans, but none of those plans have actually been implemented. One of the things has always been mobility. There was conversation about hop on, hop off
No, there was
bus
something
systems.
called the comprehensive mobility plan, also introduced and presented with a lot of fanfare.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so-
But instead, like you said, we have focused on corruption. The point I'm making is that there is money to do things. There are professional reports made that tell you the solutions, but nobody has actually put the two together and implemented on the ground. Instead, we have white elephants like that multi-level parking garage, which is built outside the city, doesn't serve anybody.
Right.
We spent like 45 crores on it, and it is literally gathering dust. If you see the top 2 floors and you walk there, it is full of dust because nobody has used that since it was inaugurated. So this is the problem with our city today. We have the funds, we have the solutions, but nobody is interested in actually working for the people and solving these problems. We are too busy in politics, or we are too busy in corruption.
Do you agree that there has been a lot of corruption in the smart city project?
I would say that the smart city, the entire project has been a huge corruption, I would say. What have we got from the smart city? From its very inception, it has been a cesspool of corruption. The smart city project was supposed to have a committee that was very broad based. It had to involve people right from the MP to the average citizen. And today we see there has not been one sort of consultative process that was.
But it was an autonomous, literally an autonomous body. But now, of course, the CCP seems to have kind of got some hold on it immediately through the.
Well, that's only because the current MLA is controlling the CCP as well as the the constituency.
Right.
So that is the only reason. But previous to that, that was only used as an excuse to not have anything done. The money has been spent, but where, nobody knows.
Should there be a proper investigation into where the funds have gone for this past?
Absolutely, we will definitely have a proper audit, of all where the money went, and we have exposed these issues multiple times. In fact, the previous MD, we exposed so many issues where they were creating, completely nonsense projects at really inflated prices. They've made a paved road with some footpath and showcased it as like the perfect pedestrian footpath somewhere near Kampal where nobody uses it at a cost of like 8 crores. So this is completely ridiculous. These have all been inflated projects and for the sole purpose of corruption.
We are actually running out of time, and we can go on and on. I'm sure we can meet again, but on this note, I'd like to thank my guest Valmiki Naik for taking the time out and discussing so many issues with regard to his own party and about the city. We wish him all the best in his future endeavors, especially with the current elections coming up. Thank you, Valmiki, for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.